Welcome to the MrpTech podcast. This is episode 21. My name is Matt, and this is a weekly podcast where I review multiple platforms and technologies to see which works best for me in order to help you. Before I get into the main topic of this episode, I want to quickly address a couple of things. If you've been following my Facebook page, MrpTechreviews, you may have seen that I posted a video earlier in the week. And the name of that video is how to try Linux for free using Etcher. After I posted that video, I went back and watched it, and there was a couple of things that I was unhappy about with the final product of that video. So I started thinking about how exactly I want to publish these podcasts, and I've sort of come up with an idea, and this may be useful for you in the future if you're subscribed to my RSS feed, or if you come across my videos on YouTube, or if you see some things that I post on the Facebook page. And so one of the things that I really want to focus on is quality rather than quantity. And I don't want to put out a bunch of terrible YouTube videos. And so the last video that I had a few mistakes in it that I didn't really account for until I was done editing. And so here's what I'm going to do for the future. I've sort of broken up what I want to do into three different categories. The first category is this podcast. And basically, if I have any news or thoughts on things that are happening in the news, or if I just want to talk a little bit about some things I've been researching on my own, that's what the podcast is going to be for. And every once in a while, you may see something in the title of me reviewing something as the MrpTech Reviews. And that's where I'm going to review operating systems or different products and review hardware, software, that type of thing. And those can be incorporated in the podcast too from time to time. But I'm also going to add another MrpTech Tips section. And these are app picks or short videos or short tutorials on how to do certain things. And these will be mostly placed on YouTube for someone to come across or to find or to watch. And as a bonus, I'd like to add the audio feed to the RSS feeds so that you get the audio version of these videos that I'm making on YouTube. So it's just kind of a general idea. I've broken up into three things: a podcast, the reviews, and the tech tips. And the podcast and review videos that I do will be higher quality, as will some of the tech tips. For the tech tips are just quick, short video tutorials that I would like to put out without having to set up my whole recording studio in order to do that. So the podcast and the tech reviews, hopefully high quality all the time. And the tech tips will be high quality too, but they may use a lesser quality microphone for some of those. So again, before I get into the main topic, just a couple of quick little things that I want to make sure everybody is aware of. If you've been listening to the last few weeks of this podcast, you'll know that I've been talking a lot about Windows 10. Today is the 26th, I believe, or 27th and of July. And the deadline to upgrade for Windows 10 from Windows 7 or Windows 8 is July 29th. So we only have a few days left. After that, on August 2nd, the Windows Anniversary Update will be released to anybody running Windows 10, and you will get that for free. So I just want to, one last time, make that announcement in case you haven't heard it enough, that the deadline is fast approaching. And from what I've read, the deadline will not be extended at all for users who want to upgrade. After July 29th, you will have to pay for Windows 10. The next thing I want to talk about very quickly is a few episodes ago I did a review on Apple Pay. And I mentioned that in a few weeks I would come back and talk a little bit about Apple Pay. I did a whole episode based on Apple Pay and the technologies behind it. And if you're curious about that, I believe it's MrpTech episode 17. And once I was completely read up on all of the technologies behind Apple Pay, I thought it appropriate to try it out. because I felt that it was very secure, as more secure than other platforms. And I've been using it for the last few weeks, and I found it very handy, found it very useful. I found myself no longer bringing my wallet with me to certain places that I know have Apple Pay, like the grocery store and other stores here and there throughout the area that I live in. And I find it much quicker. My credit card has a new chip in it, and the chip readers are very slow, and it takes a few extra seconds to cash out with that credit card and the chip. And I find Apple Pay makes my shopping experience go much faster, which tends to be the way that I like to do things. So I'm finding the experience very time-saving when it comes to shopping, and I sort of appreciate that. It's much quicker. I don't have to stand in line much faster, and I can be on my way much faster. That's all I really have to say about Apple Pay. And if you haven't tried it yet, feel free to contact me if you have any questions about it. So in today's episode, I sort of came across something this week that I think relates to last week's episode about Facebook security and privacy. And if you haven't listened to that, I highly encourage you to do so, because I talk a lot about the apps that we use and that we connect to Facebook or Google and the data that they collect. Well, one of the more popular apps over the last few weeks is Pokemon Go. And Pokemon Go has sort of taken the internet by storm and has become one of the number one all-time popular apps in just the first week of release in the US and a few other countries. In fact, so much that it has more users than Twitter. It has more users than Netflix on Android. And it goes to show you that the company behind Pokemon Go, Niantic, and Nintendo were sort of onto something when they released this app. The app is sort of an augmented reality app where you use your camera to catch Pokemon in real life situations. And I'm sure some of you have come across people searching for Pokemon in your area. I know a few different places are popular hubs for Pokemon catching in my area. But going along with last week's episode, what kind of data is being collected when you use these types of apps? Most users sort of ignore this thing, and there are some advocates out there who get concerned about the type of data that is collected. So I did a little reading, and one of the things that I want to tell you all about Pokemon Go is there are a lot of things that you do and a lot of things that Niantic, the company that put out Pokemon Go, they can collect a lot of information on you, such as where you go, when you went there, how you got there, the time that you stayed in a certain location, who you were with at that location, and they sort of store all of this information. And not only that, but they're also going to get the IP address on your phone. They're going to get the email address that you use, the web page that you were on before you logged in to Pokemon Go, your username and your location. And now all this is used through your Google account. And so, or another account that you may use to sign into this particular app, unless you specifically remove those permissions. If you'd like to know how to remove those permissions, you can listen to last week's episode. But basically, they have access to your whole Google account. That means they could have read and write access to your email. They could have access to Google Docs. And if this company is somehow attacked or compromised, your information can be given out to those with malicious intents. So given the amount of people that are using this app, there's a lot of precautions that we should take. So another way to think about this is recently in the news there have been some lawsuits between companies like Microsoft and Google and the federal government. Because more and more every year, the federal government requires these companies to give the data that they have collected to the federal government when they are pursuing criminals or trying to gather evidence and create a case for specific people. Now, we're not going to get into today whether or not that is the right thing or the wrong thing. The idea is that they do this. So over the last few years, the numbers have skyrocketed. So picture yourself in a situation where you are wrongly arrested for something and you are now able to see all of the information that you have, all the data on your life is online. So the government can seize this data information and they can see where you went, who you've been hanging out with, what you've been doing while you were there. And just another way for people to gather information about you. So there's a privacy concern about things like Pokemon Go. The reason how this all started was because one of the executives to Niantic was previously employed at Google. And he was one of the people who are responsible for Google Earth and Google Street View. And that's causing a lot of issues in the tech news. And that's sparking fear in a lot of people that Niantic is gathering a lot of information just because of the history between them and Google. Many people will probably shrug this off, but given the amount of people that use Pokemon Go, it could probably get out of control very easily. And Niantic is making tons of money off of your data. So here's some things that I found interesting about the way the data is collected. So number one, there's something called organic data collection. This is where an app collects data relevant to providing the user a specific service. It gathers data and describes the user's behavior, and a lot of users accept this. This is like artificial data. It's not really relevant to the service that is provided, and this data collected, whether it is specific to the app itself, that is usually okay with users, but this artificial data collection where the information is irrelevant, that is where it might not be accepted by most people. And so there's a lot of companies out there that are greedy about data because data is big money. And a lot of companies, they will want to partner up with the developers of these apps like Pokemon Go, and they want to collect the data too. And this might cause a system where data can be sold to other companies. Your information can be given out to other companies that do not associate themselves other than just through agreements with these app developers. And we are sort of still in the very beginnings of what is okay with our digital information. There aren't really a whole lot of clear laws on what can be done or what can't be done with our information. Now, a simple game like Pokemon Go, although it's really fun, can be cause for concern, especially if it's being used in cases with children and children's data. Mostly because children aren't aware of protecting themselves online. And a lot of parents don't understand these things either. So one of the things that I just wanted to bring up and make everyone aware of, again, last week I made an episode how to stop your data from being sent to various companies when you're not even aware of the fact that you're sending the data. you can do this with Pokemon Go as well. It may limit features, it may not limit features, but give it a shot and see where it goes. Do you really want to give up personal information to play an augmented reality game? Some people are okay with that, some people are not. I prefer to err more on the side of caution and not give up personal information. So what do you think? Do you think that games like Pokemon Go are just data caches and data collectors where your data is no longer yours but belongs to a company? Or do you think that your data, whether it's online or not, should be yours and should be kept by you and given out to only the people that you want to give your data to and none other? Let me know what you think. You can send me an email. It's mrptechreviews@gmail.com. And also, if you've got questions or if you've got some feedback for some of my podcasts, I'd really like you to take a listen to some of my previous podcasts. There's some quite good ones, and I believe, if you've been listening from the start, I'm getting a little better and fine-tuning these episodes. And as more and more listeners come on, I'd like to expand the ideas for this show and come across new topics and new exciting things to talk about. And one of the reasons why I started doing this show is because I find myself reading a lot about technology and learning a lot about technology, and was looking for ways to apply what I've learned. And if I can pass forward the things that I've learned onto people that may be less tech savvy or people who are tech savvy that are trying to learn just like me, I'd be glad to do that. So if you have ideas for me to bring up as show topics, send me an email. You can also take a look at my Facebook page. I post some articles from time to time on things related to this podcast and things not related to this podcast, just as a way to get people engaged. And there are many different topics that I want to discuss, and each week I'm sort of steered in a certain way to go down a path that even a few weeks ago I didn't know I was going to go on. And so what's really interesting to me is the fact that last week I covered this whole atmosphere of collecting data, and then the Pokemon Go phenomenon took off, and many people are also talking about data collection and privacy concerns and permissions for these apps. And that's great. It's nice to see people talking about this type of stuff, and something I find very interesting. So, have you played Pokemon Go? What do you think of that game? Is it worth giving up your data to companies that you're not aware of? For some of you, it might be. Let me know if it is. I would be super interested in hearing back from you on this topic. Stay tuned. Also, I did have, like I mentioned, I did put out a tech tip video this week. I'm going to redo the video on how to try Linux for free. There are many people out there who are interested in things like Linux, and I think it's a great topic to discuss more and more. And I'm going to remake the video. There's a couple things. I had some issues with the camera zooming in and out, focusing in and out, and a couple of mistakes just in the slurring of my words. So, like I said, I'd rather have these podcasts a higher quality rather than just having a video out there with errors. So if you ever see me post something and pull it down, it might be because I saw something after I edited that I didn't like, and I have a very high tolerance for just becoming more aware of what I'm doing online, and that tolerance level can only take so many mistakes from time to time, and I'm trying to move forward and make these shows better, and eventually I have some really great ideas coming. So stay tuned. As I mention every week, please please give me a review on iTunes. 5-star review would be great. I try to keep this podcast as simple as possible. There's nothing fancy about this podcast other than just the information. So that's why there's no theme music or anything like that. I just want a very simple podcast where people can listen and learn and hopefully give me some feedback so that I can continue on. So thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.